One is for November 2nd, which is this Friday. That probably takes an experienced person, because the third person, I don't recognize the first two names, and the third person needs to be experienced. There are two volunteers we need for naturalizations on November 16th, which is a ways away. I will give more announcements of that. That can be new people, because I'm going to be there and I will train you. I will make it so that you can do naturalizations all on your own, should you get stuck with it. I'm going to open with my memories of Squirrel Hill, and I know there's some other people who have some things to say about Squirrel Hill. But Squirrel Hill is the community in Pittsburgh, like the neighborhood in Pittsburgh, where the synagogue was so terribly violated on Saturday. I came home from my own Saturday meeting at the synagogue, and I came in the door and I said, "Bernard, is there any news?" And he said, "Alberta, don't ask." And unfortunately I did, and the only thing I could think to do was to go out and canvass, which is why I wore my shirt today, because this is the shirt that I wear out when I'm canvassing, and it kind of tells the neighborhood, "Don't shoot me, please." I'm just your neighborhood Democrat wandering the neighborhood handing out literature. I'm one of those. What can I tell you? I stayed in this community. The home where I was staying was 2 blocks from the synagogue. I went on the weekends and I prayed at that synagogue. I can't tell you how closely I feel to that, because families that I know from other places still go there. I know people who were, their doctor was killed. I mean, it's hard to even talk to people like that. You understand? It's really hard. You have something you want to say, don't you? Yeah. Okay, so it was Dan, I think, that wanted to speak, and I will let him go now and talk about Squirrel Hill or the. It's happening already. Go.
Is Dan here?
Yeah, here he is.
Hello. My sister and her husband lived in Squirrel Hill, and she sent me this text message. "We're okay, but traumatized by the murders here. Gerard knew someone who was killed. All our neighbors know someone. Even our vet sent out an email in memory of a couple who were murdered, who were dear long-term clients. We live so close to that synagogue that we were in lockdown. I cannot find words to properly say what I feel, but the feeling grows deeper and deeper. First, I was just shocked, trembling inside, almost in tears for hours. By evening on Saturday, the trembling had turned to rage. Rage at the hate. Rage at a president who sows hate and condones it. Rage at a Congress that won't call him out, won't stand up to hate in all its manifestations. Rage at a Congress that refuses to deal with gun violence. We went to the vigil on Saturday supper time. It was short notice and rather impromptu, but thousands of people came and stood in a cold, driving rain at a crossroads in our neighborhood. They were every color and complexion, every faith, young and old. This is who we are in Pittsburgh. I was out canvassing Sunday, must stay active, must work toward the light. Then I went to the much larger vigil that was organized for late Sunday afternoon. The building that holds maybe 4,000 to 5,000 was full. I was among the thousands more who couldn't get in and gathered on the steps and plaza, a sea of umbrellas in the rain. The PA system shared with us the vigil inside. Many politicians in attendance were named, Toomey and Rothfuss, our Republican senator and a local congressman, among them. Of all the speakers, only the rabbi of Tree of Life, the synagogue where the murders took place, called out politicians for their lack of leadership in eliminating hate speech. He said he was not singling out anyone, but after the rabbi called out politicians, a great chant erupted among the thousands in attendance. Vote, 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 vote. The rabbi did not single out any particular politicians, but I personally single out the Republicans in Congress who will not call out Trump and the hateful atmosphere he creates with words and deeds. The murderer hated Jews. He hated the work that the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society does with immigrants and refugees from all over the world. I am encouraging everyone to give a donation to HIAS. That's the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Let us build the good. Let the weight of our actions swing the pendulum from hate toward the light. Our mayor is a good guy.
Thank you for sharing. Any other remembrances or feeling about the room? Michael.
I moved here from Pittsburgh, and after accepting a job at the University of Pittsburgh, I knew I hated long commutes through the Squirrel Hill Tunnel, where you could get stuck for half an hour. So my solution was to live on top of it in the center of Squirrel Hill for a year and a half, even though we had no Jewish background or any other reason to live there, except that it was close to work. I never felt unsafe or unwelcome. It was a wonderful place to live, and I hope it will soon be perceived the same way again.
Thank you. Thank you. Other announcements? Susan?
I've been working at the Board of Elections, and when Dan talked about the chant, vote, 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 2 stories. There was one man, he looked ancient. I mean, even for me, I think he looked ancient. And so on his way back to his car as he was hobbling, he said, I haven't voted in 50 years, but I voted today. And he said, and I said, well, why? And he said, to get that man back to real estate and in Russia. And I said, good for you. The other story that somebody was telling me, I didn't talk to the man, he's 67 years old and it was his first time to vote. And he was voting Democratic. So there are people out there voting, voting, voting. And I have to say that the turnout of Dems at the Board of Elections is phenomenal. And the measly one Republican, they're passing on the little pink sheets. But I would say it's 30-1, the Democrats taking the Democratic slate and going in with it. So I'm very optimistic for Hamilton County.
Yeah.
Other announcements? Here we go. Marlene. Marlene is the one dressed for this week.
Strategic Engagement Planning Committee is meeting today, and we said that, hey, we're meeting the day before Halloween, should we dress up? And I said, yes. So, but what I wanted to say, if you don't know that I'm Marlena Brookfield, I am Marlena Brookfield. I am running for Cincinnati Public School Board next year. It is official. Yay! Thank you. Today's Tuesday. Sunday, we kicked off the campaign at our house. This is my husband, Tony. And it was our initial fundraiser. Am I turning this off with my husband?
It's on now.
Okay. It was a great success. We had some really good, stimulating conversations about public education and the issues facing Cincinnati Public in general. It was friends and family, so I didn't have to do the whole this is why you should vote for me, you know me, but I will tell you why you should vote for me next year on November 5th. I have this crazy idea that public education is one of the foundations of American democracy.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm idealistic, maybe I'm a little crazy, but I think that honoring the promise of a free public education to all students is one of the first ways that we can combat this horrible, awful Trump administration. If we educate our children to grow up to be informed citizens that are willing, ready, and able to participate, I feel like at the end of the day, if I can help see that happen, I will have done my job. I have a whole host of other reasons, but we have Peter to speak to us today, and I don't want to hold that up. So come talk to me if you have questions, comments, concerns, and let's get out on the 6th, because nothing's going to happen next year unless we get out on the 6th.
Bravo, Marlena. Any other announcements? Any other candidates? They're all busy out there campaigning, right?
Over there.
Any other announcements? Oh, here we go.
Here.
Wait.
So look, I'm Ellen, your horse. Next Tuesday is the Blue Wave. If you don't know what you can do individually, you can go to a polling place with sample ballots and hand them out. Now, at my polling place, we've got shifts. So if you don't know what shifts are available, try and find out who your precinct executive is in your own precinct. If you want to just go to any precinct that needs you, you go to the Democratic County headquarters on Webland Place in Pleasant Ridge. Do we all know where that is? Right near Ridge and Montgomery. And you say, what can I do?
Follow the sign.
Where can I?
The sign.
Where can I be most useful? I'll do anything. They're open probably 18 hours a day, and they need us, all of us. Okay, questions?
Now, I'm going to be out there at 6:30 in the morning at my place, but let me tell you, I can't stay all day out there. I am going to have a meeting next week. I have got a thank you, Dick, for sending us to the right places. We did get a copy of the movie Dark Money, and we will be playing it here at lunch next week. So if you would like to see this movie, Dark Money, it's the reason why so many people from this organization have gone on to join the program called Move to Amend. And we'll be furthering that along too. So go to the polls by all means, but then come back here for lunch. Be warm, see the movie, and then you can go back out.
Yeah, the movie is an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half, sorry about that, but I'm told it's really wonderful. It's true, right?
Yes, wonderful.
They say it's a thriller. A thriller. Yes. Sure.
Just really quick, I got an email, and I don't know, maybe everybody here knows this already, but the Young Activists are sponsoring the Women's March this year. It's on Facebook. It's called The Next Generation of Women's Empowerment, celebrating 100 years of women's voting. So I think it's a big one, and I really support them. In fact,
Do you know the date?
I believe it's March 19th.
March.
Yeah.
We've got some time.
If you go to Facebook, yes, but I just wanted to say it's out there, they're forming, if you want to help, whatever.
There you go. March and March. I think it's in January? We'll find out the date for you. let's hope we have something to celebrate by that time. And here we have another one.
I just have a question. Is there
Yes.
any information about the AFTAB Shabbat debate tonight at UC?
Anybody involved? Dick, you want to tell us about what's happening with NAFTAB tonight? He's wearing an AFTAB shirt, you know. But he's not the only one wearing an AFTAB shirt.
Well, I get emails in their meeting at the Chameleon to watch a debate and then, have a meeting afterwards. But other than that, I don't know. Do you need tickets?
I can't go, but I was just wondering if people do that, if there's tickets left.
There is a debate, and it's tonight.
Do you need? Yes.
Okay. Many thanks. Okay, and with that, we're going to go on to Peter. Peter came, he came early, and we got all set up. We got him with his slide projector, and then he's got his... And without further ado, this is Peter. He's the one with the little cards if you have any announcements to make for our newsletter. This is your man, and he's going to talk to you now because he's wonderful and he's got a great presentation for us. So without further ado, Peter Rose.
If you're not getting the newsletter, please fill out one of these little cards. Okay, I'm going to try to stick with exactly what's on the screen so I can finish as fast as I can if I can read it here. I handed out a handout with various versions of what ideology is. We can talk about that later, but I'm sort of sticking with a relatively straightforward, neutral form, because the concept is, McClellan, that's one of the quotes there, is it's always fought over and it's worth fighting over. I'm just counting it as the sets of ideas and beliefs that motivates us to act politically, to vote or to not vote, and exploring much more how does it come about. That's the real center of what I want to talk about. Okay, my handout offered some of these things, but as I say, I'm just using the term to describe the whole body of ideas that motivate our political behavior. See, I remembered that, so I said, okay. How do we get it? Where broadly do our beliefs come from? Political beliefs are essentially our conception of what the state is. And the state's ultimate reliance on force is the most obvious in how it responds to protest. So the first response is verbal, angry mob, nasty women, fake news, that's the sort of verbal side. But force is always available. You have the police, you have the army, and if that doesn't work, you've got prison, and if that doesn't work, you've got assassination, which is obviously very popular in Saudi Arabia, and unfortunately in some other places. Okay, well, it's important to keep in mind that these means of repressing ideas are always available when protests are too successful. I don't know how many of you have ever faced army guns. I did in levitating the Pentagon in the 60s. It was great fun. It gives you a new sense of respect for power. But societies that are not held down by forceful repression are held together by some sort of consent. Hegemony is one of the terms that's been popularized. A general agreement about what constitutes common sense, what the nature of society is, one's role in that society. And it's important to keep in mind, consent is not automatic. It's manufactured. It's constructed by the exercise of a great deal of money, imagination, and effort. I just show you the picture of one of the great books that really spells out the process in the United States. Okay, yeah. What are the main mechanisms by which consensus is achieved? Okay, I wasn't sure what I was saying here is what you're saying here. I would say, just to run through a quick list, and I hope if other people have ideas of where their sources of ideas come from that are included, please share them later. Schools, colleges, university, religious institutions, families, legal systems and institutions, political systems, parties, platforms, campaigns, speeches, rallies, and so forth. Non-state groups or organizations like unions, Freemason, Bridge Club, Move to a Man, the Greater Cincinnati Democrats. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, schools, you have public schools, you have private schools, you have religious schools. All of them have different ideological agendas. You have, among the religions, you have Catholic, you have, let's see which pictures are showing you, the Muslim temple on Clifton Avenue. You have, which one? This is a Protestant church. And then you have this temple downtown. Just, again, it's important to recognize each of these has a different ideological agenda. That doesn't mean it's bad or good, but it is important to recognize that there is a precision to specific ideological messages. The institution of the family is a system of kinship relationships. It also involves some sort of dwelling, and it's important to recognize that habitations are ideological, how cities, housing is designed, looks like, so forth. That's also conveying a message about your status in society, your meaning. It also implies institutions like marriage, or things like children. My son, the day he was born. But those entail also a whole set of obligations and a certain set of ideas that are part of the family as an institution. If you switch to the legal system, you have, again, I stress architecture, you have massive ideological statement in the sheer extent of some of these administrative things. You have courts, you have jails, and you switch to political systems, you have campaigns. This is AFTAB's headquarters, in case you haven't been there, and you can guess what that is. You also have non-state groups like unions and so forth, but I could add images and images and images. The real point is that these different communication systems, cultural institutions, literature, books, book clubs and so forth, sports, a stadium and so forth. But the point is that ideology is not some cloud of mere ideas kind of floating around. It takes concrete forms. And I would say architecture, as I already suggested, is inherently ideological. It organizes our experience of our environment and our surrounding society to tell us who we are. Each of these ideological institutes involves forms of practice, actual behaviors. In religion, bowing heads, kneeling, various rituals. Families, you're forced to hug people and have Thanksgiving dinners and things like all that, marriages, funerals. Culture, you have these book clubs, visits to museums, attending lectures, clapping at concerts. Sports requires shouting and being noisy and wearing stupid hats and so forth, and shirts. But again, I want to stress this sort of materiality of ideology in, the materiality of ideology in various sorts of practices. Also, I think it's important to recognize that all of these institutions are sites of struggle. We fight over education, over curricula, over pay for teachers, over separation of church and state in the educational institutions. So we fight over family issues like gay marriage or parents' power over children. We fight over religion. Some people want to ban Muslims, some people worry about the separation of church and state, and there are specific doctrines that people arguing why are there so many different Protestant church people actually care about specific doctrines and fight over them. But it's exactly these fights in the arena that are the basis for changing ideology. And changing for specific goals really implies, and this is the main point I want to stress, is a comprehensive strategy. You can't just do little hit or miss things. You really want to change things. And of course, the easiest thing for bringing about massive change is to have loads and loads of money. So 2 books have especially been disastrously successful comprehensive campaigns for radical change. And some of you are familiar with these books. They spell out, well, let's start with Dark Money, which some of you have read, some of you read my little summary. It's strikingly precise in the comprehensiveness of its assaults on the mechanisms of ideology. They've penetrated colleges and universities, political parties, the legal system with things like the Federalist Society. They've set up institutes like the Heritage Foundation, numerous phony citizen group for fair taxation, for religious freedom, for various other things. Also, in that process, co-opting evangelicals. I don't know if you saw the New York Times yesterday had a very interesting slideshow on how evangelicals became political. Basically, it was in the context of Jimmy Carter and their horrible disappointment that he was way too liberal after saying that he really was born again. Anyway, corporations are not people describes a more focused but ultimately equally comprehensive strategy. Lewis Powell, who later became Nixon's Supreme Court Justice and was able to do a great deal more damage there, but he started out, as so to speak, as the CEO of Philip Morris, the company which killed both of my parents, fostering all sorts of ways in which smoking was shown to be very good for you. I saw an ad with more doctors smoke Camels than any other brand. And this is ideological struggle at its ugliest. But he was so alarmed at the radicalism of the 60s and specifically a whole set of positive laws that were passed after Earth Day in 1970 that he wrote this comprehensive memo, 20 pages long. If anyone wants to read it, send me an email and I'll send you a copy. It's startling, but basically laying out for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce a whole set of strategies for changing public opinions that involved especially attacks on colleges and universities, but also spending money on political parties and engaging in a whole set of attempts at changing people's views through these various institutions. As a direct result of Powell's memo, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce became the single largest dispenser of lobbying money, used by all sorts of other corporations as sort of front groups. I don't know whether you can actually, the hell with it. Anyway, it's like billions of dollars there at the top of this list. Yeah, this is billions of dollars. This is a table that's in Corporations Are Not People, it's spelling out how convenient this idea of funneling money to the Chamber of Commerce, which sounds sort of vaguely neutral, has enormously expanded lobbying for all sorts of evil causes, as far as I'm concerned. But one of the most chilling things that Lewis Powell says is, especially with an activist-minded Supreme Court, the judiciary may be the most important instrument of social, economic, and political change. And with Kavanaugh, we will unfortunately live through the truth of that particular ugly observation. For those of us who don't have billions to assault the organs of ideology, it is crucial first that we keep in mind the whole range of these different organs. And it means that we have to be as engaged as we can in whatever realms we interact with. If you go to church, stay after church, have coffee, engage in the friendliest possible way your fellow churchgoers about health care or the destruction of the environment and so forth. If you're in the field of education or with school-age children, you should look closely at the curriculum, attend school board meetings, vote for school boards, but also one of the conspiracies that is spelled out in Corporations Are Not People is the penetration of schools to create not citizens but consumers. I was horrified. There's a thing where students get news programs they're compelled to watch, but there's a compulsory 2 minutes of advertising that goes with the news broadcast. I mean, this is the sort of thing that we should be fighting over. Sports fans should engage in bars. I know that's a big sacrifice for some people. Hanging out in country clubs and having an extra scotch after you. The way to spread hate is through the social media. Any other contributions or where you think your ideas are coming from? Yes, Nora.
If I missed this, I apologize. But for me personally, a lot of the sources you mentioned have influenced me, but I absolutely cannot discount lived experience as a source of my ideologies. Because I mean that's part of what informs my theory of action regarding running for school board, is the lived experiences I had as a CPS student, and see, you know, the narrative in our community about our schools. It kind of put that chip on my shoulder about, well, you know what? We're not all Walnut Hills, and nor should we be, but we need to be valued just as much because of what education means.
Well, one of the really frightening, sinister things on my handout is a long quotation from Karl Marx. And he stresses precisely that people's consciousness comes from their lived experience. They don't sort of change things just by having consciousness. Before consciousness comes the whole structure of society that you live in.
My thoughts on this are about the subconscious and how easy it is for marketing specialists to control our thinking subconsciously, and spending an excessive amount of time in front of commercial, consumer, competitive, one-upmanship kind of value system that we see constantly on television and in the programs we watch. And of course, the social media blathering that goes on all the time. We are really setting ourselves up. The more time we spend on this, the more we're setting ourselves up for narrow-minded thinking, because we're being controlled literally by marketing. And I think all of us need to learn more about the brain and how it works, it would be really nice if we could have some specialists come in and help us all understand. Because it's not all just logical thinking. If it was, it would be easy. That's why it's so hard to communicate with people, I think, is because what I consider logical thinking, they don't. And, you know, I come to a point where I don't know what to say. I don't know how to get past that wall.
No, I do, in our household, I do all the cooking and dishes and so on, and I always have CNN on when I'm in the kitchen, but the advertisements, most of which I know by heart now, drive me crazy. Especially, I don't know, I won't even go through some of it, but the sort of celebration of arrogance. And what I've noticed is a really shift. When I was younger, advertisements were mostly aimed at a mass audience. Now, the number of advertisements that are aimed specifically at business owners, this is how you can recruit workers more quickly, this is how you can have your taxes and things organized for your business and so forth. The shift towards the more explicit, ferociously capitalist advertisements is really very depressing.
Oh, look, the best thing I ever did was get rid of my TV about 5 years ago. It's a piece of furniture. But, so what? I don't look at any ads. I can't bear to look at any ads. I get on YouTube at night, and I can wipe out the ads with one stroke, you know, kind of things I watch anyway. And I get Democracy Now! In my mailbox every morning, Monday through Friday. That's the best thing in the world. When Democracy Now! Goes down, which it may eventually, I mean, why are they allowing it to continue? They, you know. When it goes down, that'll just about be the end. So I you know, Democracy Now! My Facebook friends tell me a whole lot that I need to know. You know? My God, I hope I tell them some things they need to know. Somehow I feel we've made that work for us a lot. Again, how long will we be able to make it work for us? Some of the social media. It's working for me so far. But I do know, of course, Facebook is an enormous corporation, one of the greatest in the world. Should we use Amazon? I do sometimes. I have books on Amazon. I write books. I'd be mortified if I couldn't put any book on Amazon, I guess. But, God, what a terrible corporation that is. It wants to own the entire country. Everything we do, I can't even go swimming unless I buy my suit on Amazon. I mean, God damn. Excuse the expression.
We're shocked.
I just have a comment about my Jewish congregation, because in my particular congregation, we're not allowed to talk politics, period. 26% of Jews voted for Trump. And I don't know of any congregation who can lose 26% of its members and still continue going. And my rabbi has decided there's no politics at my congregation, and I feel dreadfully cheated. I mean, I still go, and I kind of sneak to the people that I do know, kind of go behind people's back. But she's not in the room. I can talk politics to you. But it's very hard for me to be circumspect in a place that's so valuable to me. Thanks.
Right before I retired from Cincinnati Public, they started calling parents consumers. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And they even changed the name of where you were greeted? I forget. Do you remember, Bob?
I know what you're talking about. Off the top of my head.
I mean, it was just incredible. And about not talking about somebody, a rabbi not talking politics, how can they ignore it right now? I mean, is anything going to be said in your congregation about what happened in Pittsburgh? And the fact that, you know, it's just unbelievable. I just think that that's a cop-out.
Yeah, the president of Miami University told us that the students are our customers. Which I found really disgusting. I mean, I try not to be an elitist, but I prefer Plato's idea that the teacher is a doctor curing the sickness of ignorance. However elitist that may sound, I think it's a lot better than that you're selling some kind of goods to these poor kids.
So a few months ago, I got a meme on Facebook that went something like this. These are all issues that concern me, and there was a long list, and every one of them was supported by a huge majority, okay? He gets to the end of his list and he says, so when did I become left-wing? So here's the point. The vast majority of Americans want good public education, they want affordable housing, they want to protect the environment, you know, and down the line, and great among them is getting money out of politics. So if we can keep that in mind, we can speak to 60, 70, 80% of the people and be well received.
Yeah, it's true. These the proportions are absolutely there, what you're saying. But it's the messaging that, and how the people are receiving the message, that the message, the big message that I think gets in the way is you should have all these things, but you shouldn't have to pay for them out of your own pocket to the government, because the government can't be trusted. This has been coming from ever since Nixon. You can't trust the government with your money, but you can trust business. That's where all the trust has been, you know, all the messaging has been, if business succeeds, you succeed, and the only thing that matters is if you have money. And the whole idea of we're part of a community, that's been lost because the messaging says your individual happiness is more important than anything else. Yeah, everybody believes this stuff theoretically, but trying to get people to get out of the one issue that they've come to identify with, like abortion and tax cuts and guns. I mean, all these one issue people are willing to sell their soul for one issue. But the whole idea that we're part of a community, and if one part of the community is not getting their opportunities and fair share, the rest of us are somehow not being responsible, that's been lost. Yeah, sorry. I can't quit talking.
It's not just that. It's what's going on in the country with gerrymandering. Look what's happening in Georgia. The guy what's he running for? And he's controlling the voting, and he's knocking people off here and there. And it's just devaluing the vote and knocking it out. So, and I want to say one other thing. It's not just Nixon. Milton Friedman from Chicago. Well, even if you say Reagan, Milton Friedman was one that set the tone for companies are no longer really responsible to their consumers or to their workers. They're responsible to their shareholders. And that's what's happened also. So it's all these things coming together. Okay, that's it.
I would be tempted to try to analyze capitalism, but it might scare too many people. What's all understandable, but it's kind of depressing, is that most of what I'm hearing is how we are brainwashed, besieged with all these bad things. I'd like to hear more about strategies for fundamental change. What do we need to do to try to counter the vast force of corporations? Hey, there we go.
Wait, we have a comment.
She's my friend.
Ever since our dear departed friend Tom Mooney, president of CFT, he knew exactly what they were doing to destroy public schools, and it's a Koch brothers agenda. We have a tape called Alex, and in Alex it lists all the public entities that the Koch brothers want destroyed. And so when they said enough about, I'm a retired teacher like her, when they kept saying our failing schools, who were not failing. Our schools were fine. Oh, I'm sorry. Our schools were fine. They were not failing. But they said it enough until we let them do charter schools. And at that time, Tom Mooney said, this is a ploy to put public people's money in private people's pockets. And it's not about educating children. Charter schools do not care about educating our children, but they convinced everybody that they do. So they're destroying all the public entities, like even the postal. They want to get rid of the post office, EPA, all of our public things that protect us, and privatize everything, including water. They want to privatize water. So we need to start fighting. We need to get together. We need to put our heads together. In 1995, I saw a movie at the Mainstream Network. It was a group of people that got together at lunchtime. It's a brown bag lunch. And they were saying then that the Republicans had their think tanks getting ready to come up, to take over this country. So we got to catch up. We got some intelligent Democrats, and we need our think tanks to start getting together.
And one of the ways we can do it is keep meeting and having really, different kinds of people who represent, well, I think we just need to keep this up and have speakers about issues and not just say, okay, the election's over, goodbye.
Yeah, that's right. It's
Somebody over here.
Depressing.
Yeah, at the risk of alienating some, I will admit that I come from a family with a die-hard Republican father who worked for Ronald Reagan in California, and have been to schools which are in the have category as opposed to have-nots. Punahou School in Hawaii, Princeton University, Washington, U.S. St. Louis, all being expensive private schools, wonderful schools, where I was surrounded by people who were clearly well off and we were mere middle class. And I've also worked for 35 years for government agencies, including 2 public universities, and I'm a strong supporter of public education, therefore. So I tend to look at these debates between the haves and have-nots of Republicans and Democrats, where they let's find a way to compromise view, which is very hard to do, but not impossible. I'll give you 2 examples in a minute, but when facing Republican opposition, I think it's very helpful to find an economic or money argument that they would support to do worthy cause A, B, or C. And with the transportation systems, I'm trying to show here that we can afford to build a regional rail system that costs billions of dollars by getting, without raising taxes, by having the money and existing tax rates from businesses built near the lines, pave the lines for free for the riders and for people in this room, and make it a better system than the buses we have today. When my father was working for then new Governor Reagan, And the Bay Bridge was not, was one of his many things. He was comptroller of California Highway Department. Very controversial proposal. Let's use Bay Bridge tolls to help pay for the tunnel for the Bay Area Rapid Transit. $180 million, I didn't know it then. He asked my opinion, I was just a kid in graduate school. What do you think of BART? What do you think? Should we support this money to pay for this worthy cause, in this case, a rapid transit system? And I said, Dad, that's a no-brainer. If you do it, you will never have to widen a bridge or build another one. And so it wasn't long after that he and others convinced Reagan to do it, and by 1974, which was only 7 years later, there was more than 70 lines of rail in the San Francisco Bay Area. First use that I think I'm aware of highway money being used to pay for public transit. When I retired for about the 4th or 5th time, I'm in Fairfax, Virginia, in a church that's in upscale Fairfax. Lots of retired military officers like myself who tend to be Republicans. Nobody ever talked politics openly, and so I had to be very careful when I said something that might be a political argument, just as Peter was indicating. And in November of 2014, we were blessed on Thanksgiving morning with our 3rd grandson, born almost 5 months early. Spent the next 6 months in a hospital. $1 million baby. Bills my teaching daughter at Auburn University certainly could not afford to pay. And, you know, what would we do? What would we have done if she hadn't been working for a public university with a good insurance system? And so I'm relaying, you know, the details of this occasionally to our Sunday school class. And one person whom I knew well piped up and said, well, was it Obamacare that was helping pay her bills? That's the closest we came to a political discussion. And I said, no, it was just a good insurance system from a public university. She happened to be the wife of the person who was driving me home from Sunday school classes, so I had to stay friendly with them. We had retired colonels and generals, and occasionally I had to tread softly on subjects that were clearly Republican versus Democrat. But for almost all of the issues that Democrats and people who have progressive values are searching for or want to support, they almost all cost a lot of money. And so I have more than once publicly said in postings and letters, emails, and so forth, you know, I'm a Democrat, but I believe that all of these things need to be financed in a way that is not a giveaway program, that you have to balance the budgets. Budgets must be balanced at all levels of government, federal, state, local, and find a way to do it. And for 35 professional years, that's what I've done for the universities of Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and the Air Force. Find ways to fund big-ticket, worthy causes in a way that you have a revenue stream matching what's going out. And far too many Democratic proposals don't do that. And I hate the term liberal, I hate the term left-wing. I will admit to being a progressive person because I think forward progress is better than the status quo and looking backwards.
Give it to Martha.
I taught at a university, as Peter did, and we might as well throw in the fact that universities are bought. They're basically bought. Our president, our new president at UC, recently bragged in the Inquirer that, what was it, 90% of our medical research at UC is now supported by corporations. He thought that was a big plus for us. We're fourth in the country in how much of our research is supported by big money. Now, that's been a disaster around the country, that research is for them. It's supported by them, for them. Well, anyway, I won't get into that, but I just wanted to say, when I canvass, I wear a certain button. It says, vote. It's not illegal yet. Because you gotta know, South Dakotans can't all vote. Georgians can't all vote. Purged people won't be able to vote. I mean, we're not gonna have free elections.
Michael, I wanted to ask about the military. Do they pay any of their costs for their health care, and same for the generals and colonels?
I'll answer that this way. I had 2 daughters born in Bethesda Naval Hospital, the same hospital that served U.S. presidents. $7 each. That was my cost. So the health care that we enjoyed throughout my 20 years on active duty and could still enjoy at Wright Pat was financed by basically accepting lower pay than we might have been earning in the private sector for comparable jobs. That was the argument. But there were a lot of freebies that were excellent benefits, like the base exchange of the commissary, that had to be financed outside of taxpayer funds and were through contributions from the sales of stuff at the BXs that helped offset the bowling alley, because people drink beer at the bowling alley, helped pay for some of the other fun things that we had. So you can accept or not accept the fact that we got health care for free, or we got it because we were earning a lot less money. When I entered active duty, I was earning about $2 an hour. With the volunteer service, it went up to about $5, which wasn't exactly a huge amount of money. But I had graduate degree from Washington University and undergraduate from Princeton. If I'd been working in a lucrative job, I certainly would have earned more than that. I sold pots and pans to get through graduate school and earned $5 an hour doing that.
President Eisenhower declared, if you want to know what socialism is, join the army.
You know, I just would like to add, I have two sons who are or were in the military. My one son that's still in the Army, they pulled a lot of those medical benefits and a lot of availability of service over the last few years.
2 more comments, one from Peter.
I just wanted to say that that we as Democrats and progressives, we have to play the long game. Someone referred to the Koch brothers and what they set up with ALEC, what they set up with going after public institutions. They have been playing the long game for a long time. And they have set in place all of these things which are attempting to, in my opinion, destroy our country. And my concern is dual. It's dual in this regard. If we have a blue wave next week, and I will tell you, I always nix that notion because I am campaigning like we are behind. And never, to me, mention blue wave because it just gets me upset. But if there is a blue wave, I'm afraid we're going to become complacent. And we're going to say, mission accomplished. God forbid that I should use those words, but that's what we're going to say. That's my fear. And if we don't win, I'm afraid we're going to become dispirited. Because we have to play the long game. And that is, we have to continue the enthusiasm that we're seeing now. First, we need to get everyone to the polls. And then when we're finished, after Election Day is over, we have to resume that level of enthusiasm.
Well, we don't leave just yet. I have to tell you, he's been waiting a long time. Do you have a mic?
I don't, but I can walk.
We'll get you
One for each hand. That'll work. Thank you. Just a quick thing. While the tragedy in Pittsburgh was the biggest news of the week, remember also that there were 2 people killed in Louisville?
Yes.
By a person who first attempted to go break into an African American church and thankfully failed at that before he went and killed 2 other people. I want to make sure that we're not losing track of things, because this last week was really hard for a lot of different reasons. So that was all.
Also, there was
We all have comments to that. Before Dr. Weaver leaves the room, I want to make clear that the week after, next week, we have dark money. We all know that the voting is coming up. And that's November 6th, dark money. Come here for lunch, do your poll working and coming here for lunch. But Dr. Weaver is going to be talking about military spending in our community. Is that right? Right. So this is from a former military person who knows about the money stuff. So we have this conversation, I hope, will not die. Please help us keep it alive. So next week, dark money, and the week after that, military money coming in our community. So we will not be disappointed, she says. Okay, and with that, we have comments to anyone.
One good thing was that the Muslim community in Pittsburgh started a fundraiser, and they have raised over $100,000 for the people in Pittsburgh, and I think that's wonderful.
There we go. Some of us are playing a long game, and I think that's where we need to be. Okay, and in the back we have our hats going on.
Yeah, but that's not going to stand. I can yell.
No, it's not.
It never works. Everybody tries.
Regarding your daughter and your premature grandchild, even though she had insurance through wherever she was working, Obamacare was still in effect in that policy, because one of the advantages of Obamacare is you can no longer get into financial bankruptcy because you have medical bills. Once you hit your out-of-pocket and your deductible, your insurance is required to pay 100%. That's a big difference. I'm a survivor of medical bankruptcy, and I had insurance. So everybody in here, you have to know that Obamacare affects every insurance policy that is in existence. And we need to hang on to that. You don't know how bad it is until you wake up and you've got $250,000 in medical bills that your health insurance won't cover. So be mindful of that. Even Medicare, everybody who's on Medicare, once a year you get a list from Medicare that says, these are the things that you can get. And it lists all the tests and all the vaccinations and all that stuff. That is all because of Obamacare. So think about that. We're all affected by it. That's all.
And with that, we're going to say thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. You have been a great audience. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you coming. Come on back. There's a long game to be played. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Wonderful presentation.
Done your 18, but engage with those fellow drunks or whatever. If you're reading people and writing people, write letters to the editor, we'll do whatever it takes. But I'll quit there. I'm just especially anxious to hear there are other sources of where you feel your ideas have come from and other sorts of strategies for bringing about meaningful change. Thank you.
Peter, you have to add social media and what the internet is doing, because I think what we're seeing the ramifications of how things just spread that aren't true.
You're right. I mean, one of the lists I was, broadly the communication system, and social media are definitely part of that. I wondered if I should wander around some more uptown and get a picture of a radio station or a TV station, but you're right. It's part of what's privatized it, and it's one of the things they've been talking about, especially lately. That this